Good morning, church family and YouTube listeners. I was sitting down doing the study and I thought, this is one of the most hardest things for me. I have a hard time with this one. And I've had it my entire life. I'm constantly getting in trouble for things that I have said that I didn't even realize were wrong or bad or anything, because things just kind of roll off. This has been a problem for me. But I mean, just overall, and when you hear people tell a story or something like that, you ever wonder why they got to use such horrible language? Like, all the babble. I mean, there's no better words that we can use. I mean, that gets me. Like, when I start hearing certain words over and over, every other word, I tune out. I'm not even really hearing what they're saying at that point. And it doesn't necessarily offend me per se, but I'm just thinking to myself, man, you gotta be better than that. You know what I mean? Does it offend us in some ways? Yeah, it does. Because we try not to talk that way. As Christians, we know the hardest part of our body to control is our tongue. Mm-hmm. It's also the smallest part of our body that we have to control. We have all these organs, and they kind of just go on their own, right? Your heart just kind of has a beat. You kind of have control of that when you start exercising. You can raise it up. You can slow it down by sleeping and relaxing. You move your hands, and it's and fingers and arms and legs, and these are all things that just happen. It's a thought, and then you do it. Mm-hmm. Our tongue is the same way. And, if we exercise a certain muscle in our body, that muscle gets stronger, right? Same concept goes with your tongue. Only it's not a muscle that you're trying to increase. It's a muscle you're trying to control. Much like when you have a cramp or something like that, there's not a whole lot you can do. You can try and hit it out, you can stretch, all these things that you can do to either prevent muscle cramps. But what do you do for our tongue? I don't know. Does a tongue cramp? I've never had that problem myself. But we have control of our tongue. Or do we? Or should we? Or can we? Yeah. All good questions, right? James explains here in chapter 3, the book of James in chapter 3, that we can and must control it. We're gonna see what he has to say about that here shortly. Let's have a word of prayer and give this to God. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for services, what we learned in 2 Samuel from Sarah and David. And Lord, I pray that you be with us the rest of the service here. Open ears and hearts. And Lord, remove me and use me as a vessel to convey your word. Lord, I pray that you do that. We give you all the praise, glory, and honor in your name, Jesus Christ. Amen. So point number 1, and just think of the tongue in this point. We must smother the fire, not add kindling to it. Well, the fire being our tongue. James chapter 3, verses 1 and 2 says this: My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Interesting. So what James is telling us here, that if we had complete control of our tongue, we would be perfect. That's pretty amazing, right? That's what kind of power our tongue has. Our speech, what we say, what we don't say, has the ability to perfect us. That's pretty powerful. What else does James say about that? It's an impossibility. We cannot. It's an impossibility for us to do it perfectly. We can't. This is not meant to discourage us. This is meant to prepare us. With this knowledge, we can take preventative, corrective measures to control our tongue as we are, as we have to, as we should. One of the ways doing this is teaching. You say, well, what does teaching have to do with our tongue? Well, let's see. If you turn to Romans chapter 2, we're going to read verses 21 through 24. Romans chapter 2, starting in 21 through 24. Listen to this. This is being spoken to the Gentiles, and Paul hit it on the head when he was talking about this. Thou therefore which teachest another, teachest thou not thyself? Thou that preachest a man should not steal, dost thou steal? Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery, dost thou commit adultery? That thou abhorrest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? Thou that makest thy boast of the law, through breaking the law dishonorest thou God. For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written. You see, so we're all learning here in this world all the time. We're being taught by, hopefully, God, but we're being taught by people at work. We're being taught just in life in general. What he's saying here is that if we're controlling our speech and teaching others, we're teaching ourselves. So that's not easy to do, right? That's not hard. But if you think about it, when you're teaching someone to do something else, if you're not doing what you're teaching, then what does that make you?
A hypocrite.
A hypocrite, thank you. Yes, that is the definition of a hypocrite. You can't say one thing, do another. You can't teach one thing and do another. That's a huge role that our tongue plays in our society, especially when it comes to our relationship as Christians and non-believers. What we say means a lot to them. They are constantly judging us. Well, if you said this, then blah, 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 blah. So this is a huge part of our tongue and controlling it. As we teach, as we lead by example, it says here in James chapter 1, if any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain.
Yeah.
What he's trying to show us here is that our tongue is very, very important. What comes out of our mouth or what doesn't come out of our mouth are the same. Sometimes they are just as powerful what we don't say. James chapter 3, 3 through 6. I'm going to read that. Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. Wow. He's saying that, you put, I don't know if any of you have ever ridden a horse, but when you have the reins in your hands, what's controlling is the little bit that's put in their mouth. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not very comfortable. You know what I mean? So they're going to listen to your every move. When you pull to the right, they're going to go right. If you pull to the left, they're going to go left. If you pull up, they're going to stop because they're like, It is such a small bit that controls that horse.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Such a small bit that controls that entire horse. Horse. It says here that the ships are so big, yet the little rudders underneath are, small. But yet they can turn that whole ship all the way around in a circle just by the little finger of a steering wheel. When we don't grab our own reins, and when we don't steer our own ship, when we don't control our tongue, we are setting ourselves up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is important because it says that if you don't control it, it sets off a world of iniquity, and it also sets fire on the course of nature. Nature, folks, this isn't a small problem that we have with our tongue. This is a big problem.
Yeah,
Like, it can set nature off. It can turn the course of nature in a small degree. You say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, we have a nature in ourselves as human beings. When we start to let our tongue and our mouth control what we are doing, that goes against nature.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to just rattle everything off that comes to our head. Now, that's not easily done. I'm horrible at it. I say things all the time that I regret, and I've lost friends, I've lost jobs because I've said something that either offended something or it was something that they didn't want to hear. Even though it was true, doesn't matter. Sometimes you got to know when to pull the reins.
That's right.
You got to know. And folks, that's not easy. I can speak that from experience. It says here in the Life Application Study Bible, there's a note that's in here. It says, James compares the damage the tongue can do to a raging fire. The tongue's wickedness has its source in hell itself. The uncontrolled tongue can do terrible damage. Satan uses the tongue to divide people and put them against one another. Idle words are damaging because they spread destruction quickly, and no one can stop the results once they are spoken. Did you hear that? Once you've said it, you can't go back from that.
That's right.
Now, people forgive and people move forward, but they ain't going to forget that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not going to forget that thing that you said. Trust me, I've had people bring stuff up that I've said from 10 years ago. And it still means to them as much as it does today that it did 10 years ago. So, it's important. Once we say what we shouldn't have said, we have lost right then.
Yep.
We have to control our tongue. We dare not be careless with our words, thinking we can apologize later, for even if we do, the scars remain. A few words spoken in anger can destroy a relationship that took years to build. Before you speak, remember that the words are like fire. You can neither control nor reverse the damage they can do.
That's right.
I mean, we see fires, especially here in California. I mean, they're just nature for us. They're going to happen. But the destruction that a fire leaves behind takes years, if not forever, to repair. This is the same thing that James is saying here. Our tongues are like fires, and we should not be adding kindling to that. We're just getting ourselves in trouble. This is actually spoke about in Proverbs 26, chapter 26, and I'm going to read this 18 through 28. Proverbs 26, 18 through 28. Now this is important. If you want to read along, please do. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor, and saith, Am I not in sport? Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no table bearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a table bearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. Burning lips and a wicked heart are like a potsherd covered with silver dross. He that hateth dissembleth with his lips, and layeth up deceit within him. When he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. That's pretty powerful. There are people in this world that don't care about what they say. They don't try to control their tongue, and they don't want to. They don't care what they say. You can usually tell right off the bat one of those people, because they just rattle off nonsense. They don't know half the time what they're talking about. They're just doing this just so they can do it. And those kind of people are ruining themselves and people around them. You can't just rattle off everything you want. You have to imagine, it says here, though the man who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death. It's like throwing it or shooting an arrow at someone. Words, you grow up and you hear sticks and stones may break my bones, but finish it.
Words will never hurt.
Exactly. That's not true.
Yes, that's right.
We're taught that as a kid because people say mean things, and yeah, a lot of times probably don't mean it, but they say it, and it could hurt. Okay, words do hurt. Words are important. Right. We learn that later on as adults that it is important. After we've been taught our whole life, it don't matter. But the reality of the fact is that it does matter. It matters. It's so important. It can ruin your life. It can ruin people's lives around you. There are 4 tongues. There's a controlled tongue, a caring tongue, a conniving tongue, and a careless tongue. The controlled tongue, those with this speech pattern think before speaking, know when silence is best, and give wise advice. That sounds good. The caring tongue, those with this speech pattern speak truthfully while seeking to encourage. Now we have on the flip side the conniving tongue. Those with this speech pattern are filled with wrong motives, gossip, slander, and desire to twist the truth. The careless tongue. Those with speech pattern are filled with lies, curses, quick-tempered words, which can lead to rebellion and destruction. What we say probably affects more people than any other action we take. It's not surprising then to find that Proverbs gives special attention to words and how they are used. 4 common speech patterns are described here. The first 2 should be copied, while the last 2 should be avoided. You just say, how do you do that? Well, let's talk about Satan and God here. If you want to know how to talk, then I would pray. If you're getting your speech from God and His wisdom, purity, peace, consideration for others, submission, mercy, sincerity, impartiality, and goodness will come of that. If you don't pray and you're not getting your knowledge from above, it says here, Satan is going to fill you with bitter jealousy, selfish ambition, earthly concerns, and desires, unspiritual thoughts and ideas, disorder, and evilness.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but I prefer God and His wisdom. Moving on to point number 2. Now this one's important because this one kind of goes along with the first one, but this is actually one of the Bible truths. Number 13 Bible truths from the ranch. It's controlling our speech helps control the body. This is very important. James chapter 3, 13, verse 18. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Yeah. That's important. James says here, if you speak the truth, if you speak from love, your speech is coming from above. I rhymed that. Here's an example for you, and this is kind of a different kind of example, but this is a perfect example. I was thinking about what kind of example I could use here, and this one kept popping up. A while back when I first moved to Cody from California during the '08 crash, went up there and there's not a whole lot of jobs up there. So my first job was at a McDonald's. It wasn't the greatest job, but it was a job. I was making money and I was providing for my family. But as any job that I do, I do it to the fullest of my ability. I'm not just going to show up and not do it. But I had become very efficient on the grill with very little training. The person that trained me, I don't think knew how to do it themselves. One of the managers had told me one day, she was sitting there watching me, and I was getting nervous. I was like, am I doing something wrong? And she's like, no, I've just never seen it ran that smoothly. And of course, that put a big smile on my face. Made me feel good that she'd been there for 20 or 15 years. I can't remember which one it was, but she'd never seen it ran that smoothly. And I was like, wow, okay, it's not that hard, I thought. But I'm not bragging about it, but it was something I was just good at. Soon, I was told I'd be training new employees how to run the grill, which would be a good thing because nobody else knew how to do it very well. One day, I had a later shift. I came in to see another worker training someone. This person that was being trained ended up being a good friend of mine. But she was pregnant, and there was sort of a language barrier there. And this guy, I mean, he was just, I stood there for a minute, and his name was Shane. He was a young kid. He might have been 17 at the time. He was getting ready to graduate high school. And he was just going, and just he's got the tools, and he's clanking things around, throwing everything around, and he's yelling at her, "This is what you gotta do!" And no organization, no nothing. I'm thinking, man, she's not getting any of this. This guy is not showing her what to do. He's just doing it, and in the meantime, he's making a huge mess for everyone else behind him to clean up. That's inefficient. So I was to take over. So I went over there. I said, "Hey, man. I'm here to start my shift. I'm gonna take over training Agnes, and you can go do whatever you're gonna do." and as he stepped away, I stepped in, and I said, "Agnes, you're never gonna get anywhere moving like he was." Well, he wasn't away yet. He hadn't gotten away yet. So he heard what I said. He said, "Are you talking down about me?" I said, "No, I'm not talking down about you. All I'm telling her is that what you were doing was incorrect." And he didn't like that. But anyway, that's one of those times where my speech would have probably been better used, and I didn't. But the point of the matter is that I slowed down, and I was communicating to her everything that I was doing in a calm manner, not moving around, throwing everything everywhere. And by the time we were done with the shift, I was just watching her, and she was doing everything that I had taught her to do, and she was keeping up with our busiest rush hour at dinner time, and that was her first time on the grill. I'm sorry, but if she had remained training with Shane, she would have never got there. She would have never got there because he wasn't using his words. He was yelling and screaming. When you're yelling and screaming, what does that do to the person you're yelling and screaming at?
Closes their ears.
Closes their ears, puts pressure on them. They get in a different mindset. She's thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that." If you calm down, you use your words wisely, and you're calmer as you're doing something. Words are important because after I got there and I was calm, she was able to hear what I was saying. And when she could hear what I was saying, she was able to watch what I was doing. Therefore, she was absorbing it all because she was hearing and seeing. Before, she couldn't hear because she was being yelled at, and she couldn't see because she was too busy focused on what was being said. So what comes out of our mouth controls what we're doing with our body. He's yelling and screaming. He's moving 1,000,000 miles a minute, but he ain't getting nothing done. None of the orders are getting filled, but he's going to town. He's working real hard. It's like the rabbit, turtle and the rabbit, tortoise and the rabbit. Tortoise hair, thank you. I could get it right. I knew it was one of those. But, the rabbit would be, but you'd have to stop and rest, and here comes the tortoise. It's consistency. The same needs to be with our tongue. We have to have the same consistency and fluidness with our tongue as we do with our body. And if we will do that if we have that control of our tongue. that comes out. Our speech and our manner and how we're speaking controls what our body's doing. I mean, think about it. If you're yelling at someone, what's your body doing? Usually, this, and this. But if you're talking calmly, you're usually calm. In a calm matter, your words are slower, they're better, they're not, you have time to think before you're rattling out things, right? These are all things that we learn, with age and time. My point is the calm speech. With calm speech, calmed her, she was able to focus. I already said that. I got ahead of myself. It's a silly example, but it isn't, because this applies to our life. If we start to yell, again, what is our body doing? What's our facial expressions when we're yelling? I mean, they're ugly, right? It's not fun to look at. It's not fun to hear. In verse 17, James chapter 3, verse 17, I've already read it, but I'm going to read it again. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. James says that the wisdom that is from above is first pure, peaceable, gentle, and easy to be treated. Well, of course it is, because the person whom you're speaking to can focus and listen. There's no need to yell. There's no need to what James is saying is always remain calm with your speech. If you remain calm with your speech, your body remains calm. That's a huge part of emotion, is our speech. There's another important point here, is what you say and what you don't say are both important.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you don't say something, that could be even worse. Even worse. Proper speech is not only saying the right words, but controlling your desire to say what you shouldn't. That's not easy, right? Here are some examples of what, before you speak, is it, these are questions you need to ask yourself. And I know that during a conversation, this doesn't happen, but it should. Before you speak, is it gossip? Does it put others down? Is it bragging? Is it manipulative? Is it exaggeration? Are you complaining? Are you flattering? Are you lying? If you ask yourself all those questions, your chances of saying something you shouldn't are significantly decreased. I mean, it's going to happen. It says here that we can't completely control our tongue. But James has given us the tools to do so. He says, before you speak, instead of asking your questions that I just listed out to you, you can simplify it to 4 questions. You say, is what I want to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And most important, is it from above? You see, we like to just, no matter what the situation is, and like you guys, I have these people who get on the phone, something went wrong, they didn't get their slab, they didn't pay the bill, or they paid the bill and it didn't show, or all these different scenarios, or how do I pay this, why did I get charged that, or blah, blah, blah. All these things come up, especially when you're talking about money. Now, on the other end, these people are not always nice. They're not. They're not always nice. They're always usually rude. Like, why did this happen? What's going on? What's wrong with you guys? You guys can't get nothing right. We hear these things all the time. But because we're being talked to like that, does it really justify us talking back to them like that? No, it doesn't. And that's tough, right? That's like, well, he did it to me, but we have to be better than that. And that's not easy. Like, you're getting yelled at and you're like, the phone's over here and you can still hear him. And but we as Christians, and being read in the book, we have the knowledge to know how to control our speech. Often we don't. We just rattle it off. And even sometimes halfway through getting it out, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or you elongate it or something, or you get right there and you're almost there, but you've already kind of got it out. Like, what do? Do you keep going or do you stop? You get in these situations all the time. Like, if you stop. If it's something that's coming out and you don't let it go, just hold it back. I know that's easier said than done, right? Well, what do we do about that? How do we get control of our tongue? What is the main thing that we can do to help ourselves with that? Other than the things that we've already talked about here, the most important thing is if you're struggling with your speech, you need to go to God. God has the wisdom, and not only does he have the wisdom, he can help. He can help. Whenever we're in a situation where we've been frustrated, someone's yelled at us, we got to make a phone call that we don't want to make. We gotta breach a tough subject, a subject that nobody wants to talk about, no matter what the situation is. We got to talk about someone doing something wrong. We got to question someone. We got to parent someone. You're messing up. You're not doing it right. Whatever, whatever the situation is, there's a million of them. What do we do before we go into a situation like that? Pray. Go to God. Get the words from him. He's not going to have it written out for you in a letter or nothing like that. But trust me, when you go to him and then you approach the subject, you've allowed yourself to not only go to God, you've allowed yourself to stop. Think about it. Get God involved. Get him working. Get the knowledge of the Bible coming through. Get him to speak for you. But this takes time. And it doesn't happen on your first time. No, you got to keep going to him. This is a repetitive thing. This is an everyday thing for us. This isn't something that we just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to control my speech now. This is something that we have to continually work on every day of our lives. Hopefully, we get better each day, right? When we make mistakes, when they're words, it's like a fire, and it's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our words are important. They're very important. Think about it. When in your life have you felt good about being tore down? From a boss or from, heck, even your parent or your best friend or someone that you live with. It's not cool. But if you're getting encouragement and love from those people, how much better do you feel as a person? God can give us that. In closing, we as Christians need to control our speech. We must. It's not, maybe we will. It's not how this works. We must speak when needed, and we must hold our tongue when we shouldn't speak. That is the hardest thing for some of us to do. We must ask God's help with our speech. We must control our speech so that we can control our bodies. Because what you're saying, if you're angry, what's your body doing?